Hello and welcome back to APIs You Won't Hate. I, of course, am Mike Bifulco, one of the founders of APIs You Won't Hate and your podcast host. I am sitting down today for a conversation with a new friend of mine to talk through what is a really interesting API product with kind of a fascinating and unique story from inception to product to where they are today. And I'm really excited to sit down and talk to Artem Bugara from Newscatcher. Artem is like me, a YC founder, and unlike me, has a really interesting story of the inception of his company and how he's really built something interesting through many interesting little bumps along the way. And I'm really excited to get to chat with you, Artem. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. How are you doing today?
Hey Mike, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm doing great. Happy to share something I've learned so far as a first
Yeah.
founder. Yeah.
So let's start. I think with tell the world what let's tell the world what Newscatcher is. So what's your elevator pitch for Newscatcher?
It's funny, my elevator pitch for Newscatcher changes almost every week. But I think the latest one based on like all the latest interactions and changes in the world is basically Newscatcher think our assumption is I'm gonna start with a problem, right? So my assumption is that companies don't really leverage information that can be found in news. Surely, if you ask, and the most important thing is like I think they do, but they don't, but they actually don't. If you ask like the company, they're gonna obviously say like, yeah, CEO, management, read like Bloomberg or FT or something else, and obviously they like really looking into how like Trump Biden debate is going, like who's gonna win, how the interest rate gonna change, what the corporate tax. Of course, and that's like important for big. It is important like as a big microeconomic shift, or like as a big thing going on, or like the war and conflict. But in reality, like that's not what usually makes company any like money. Usually in a day-to-day business, there's like much more like direct and applicable things that like are important. And a lot of those actually can be automated or like semi-automated. And so our idea is actually for all the at least the largest companies, like each department working for like each industry in each region usually can benefit a lot by either losing less money or gaining more money by like being able to leverage stuff that can be publicly and openly available, not just like a big kind of things. So that's where that's where we are today. But in more simple terms, I would say that Newscatcher basically provides a news API. We aggregate publicly available news articles from all over the globe, and not just like big media, but local news, industry specific news. And then what we do is we basically take this, we have over 1 billion or 1.5 billion articles indexed in our database, all like indexed and easily, and being easy to search. And what we do is we kind of try to meet an enterprise customer, deeply understand what they need, and then say like, look, we have the data that has insights and that has stuff that is important for you, but more of that, we're gonna help you really like integrate it. We're gonna do like a bespoke integration, so a little bit like Palantir like approach. And I think that's kind of our thing. I think what over the last 4 years doing New Sketch, I think the most important insight we realized is that the biggest problem is not like, you know, getting data and like getting articles to the same shape and form from like over 70,000 news sources. It's rather to be able to actually integrate it into like workflow into day to day of business of some specific department in a specific company. So yeah, that's kind of where we are right now.
When you and I first chatted, I was really interested diving in on your website, looking at some of the information on there. That the heading of your website is something like the news intelligence at a global scale or something like that. And from the sounds of it, so you've got a database with hundreds of thousands, millions, billions articles, 70,000 sources, and all focused on aggregating and providing intelligence around news.
Yeah.
One of the first questions that my mind ran to was like, how do we get there? How does that start? That is a massive undertaking of a project. And I'm really curious about like the story that got you there. So can you tell me a little bit about maybe your career leading up to Newscatcher and the reason that this came into existence?
Sure. So basically Newscatcher has two co-founders, me and Maxime. Maxime is CTO, I'm the CEO. But originally we are both non-CS degree data geeks, kind of.
I like it.
Yeah. So, and probably like, I'm gonna start with like, so I know Maxime already for like 15-ish years since like schooling back in Ukraine in Donetsk. Then we actually studied together in one university in Ukraine. Then we got accepted to the same university in Strasbourg. And like, so yeah, we got a lot of actually years been studying together. And then just for the few years, I think we've been like a little bit apart from like doing different master's degrees and having different, our first jobs basically. But originally, so we got into, so like I said, we are like no CS degree engineers. So we had to do all of it ourselves. And it actually started one day in Strasbourg, France, where Maxime came to me and he said, "Oh, I've just like learned about this like Titanic data set, Titanic like machine learning competition, Kaggle. Kaggle is a website for machine learning people to like compete with each other." And it was like, I think 10, maybe, I think it was 10, kind of 10 or 9 or 8 years ago. And Maxim and I both kind of, we studied economics. And I think economics was the last part we actually enjoyed. We enjoyed the most like mathematics and statistics and like game theory and probability and all this kind of stuff. And so like these Kaggle and like data science sounded like a nice trajectory for us to keep working on. And so that's how we got into like programming, by learning R. I think we actually
Ah,
yeah, I think we actually like studied on Data Camp. I think there was the website. And I actually remember Maxim one day was like, wait, I think he at some point he took all the courses and and I don't know how much actually he learned from them, but he was like really dedicated to like studying and doing something with that. So yeah, we've been basically slowly just getting into this. And for our master's degree, I went to Toulouse School of Economics, which is a pretty solid economics school, where I think the dean or the head of it had like Nobel Prize in economics, Jean Tirole.
wow.
And I studied the econometrics. That's actually like, like a more like applicable, applied, like like economic statistics. Makes so Maxime actually studied like something actually that was called, I guess, data science in Paris Sorbonne. But yeah, we've been there. And one thing that happened, I went to, after the first year at doing my master's, I found an internship in a French company. So basically, the CEO is a TSE, Toulouse School of Economics alum in Dubai. I went there and basically I was like an intern there. And then I said like, look, I don't want to really go back to university. I don't know how many more years of education I need to actually work. I always thought about it, to be fairly honest with you. And so I started with my very first job, where I was like, just like, I think I had a lot of freedom and I could like try to improve a lot. And I think that's where like I understood that like I really like coding. And one day I had to do some web scraping job. And that's how I said like, okay, it's finally time to like open Python. And I think this, in one day I started doing something in Python, and then I came back to R. And yeah, and since then I was like really passionate about Python. And I was trying to do a lot of like side projects as well as Maxime. And we chatted about it. We really liked it. And I guess at some point I realized one thing. I don't know anything about Python. I know like Python, but I don't even know what server is, how internet works. And so
Yeah.
I had some side project where I decided to go from 0 to 1, like following like Y Combinator startup school thing. And so basically I've launched I was like scraping some news, actually, like comparing some coverage for something in Ukraine, I think the presidential election. But basically it was like pretty cool because I had to learn everything. And I think I still remember this evening where I realized that, well, database is actually like you can get it running with one Linux core. Like it's like Postgres apparently doesn't have to be like, it's not a big building with like data. Is pretty much it's pretty much easier than that. And I think that was like really, I was working a lot and like I was doing my side project a lot. And for like 2 months, I kind of learned a lot of stuff about like how things work, how servers work, what AWS is, like how everything works. And I really kind of enjoyed it. And since then I thought like it's pretty cool. I should probably do something. I should probably do something of my own with that. And I guess by the end of 2019, I was just looking for another like side project, technically interesting. I just found this like other news API, and I thought like, look, it sounds like a good idea, even though I don't really have any problem with it. I don't know anyone who needs it, but I just thought like it's a really cool technical challenge. And so that was like a side Newscatcher was like a side project in the beginning. And so I guess if there's anyone listening to me, like it's having a cool technical challenge is a great reason for the side project. And it's probably like the worst reason for like starting actually a company. If you don't know what you're doing for whom, like, and that's what a lot of people do. They kind of like assume. I think they assume that something is needed. They build it, they ship the code. No one uses it. They say like, yes, we need more features. They add more features. Well, that's not how it works. But anyway, one thing, but a few things from startup school that we do. So yeah, and I asked Maxime to join me, and we started like remotely. It was beginning of 2020. There was some rumors about this big kind of flu stuff going on in China. And so we thought like, yeah, that's probably like the really, which for people listening us from 2055, there was a thing called COVID. And so, yeah, we thought like, okay, like the whole planet is going to shut down, but that sounds like just the right time to quit my job and start Newscatcher. And yeah, and so we took the basics of Y Combinator, which is like launch fast, talk to your users, focus on everything, what's important. So we just said like, okay, we're gonna give ourselves 2 months to build some kind of MVP. We're gonna release it, and that's how it all kind of started. In 2 months, we actually released our MVP. We actually wrote a blog post. There was like a blog post how we done it, mostly on like credits from startup school on AWS, and mostly using just AWS Lambdas and Dynamo. So it was like and AWS Elasticsearch. So there was a lot of like cloud slash serverless solutions. So yeah, we just kind of launched, and surprisingly, it was a really nice thing to do because that got us some kind of like attention from the crowd. I think I've done a lot of like posting on Reddit and Hacker News to figure out like if people like it. So I think at this stage we kind of realized that yeah, like, people like it, and we thought like this is enough, even though no one was really like, yeah, take my money and give me the access. But we thought like, yeah, there's like some buzz around it. Like people think it's cool, so we should probably keep doing that.
Sure. Yeah, you've taken a really interesting path. So I would guess you may be the only person I've ever met who started coding by learning R and found your way into building a full on product. Like I think there's probably a lot of data scientists, data engineers, whatever they're called in 2024 who learned R or Python or something like it first. It's definitely a fully inverted way to get yourself to learning about servers and the web and all that from there. And I am really intrigued by your ability to drum up interest too, right? Like that's always an interesting part of the story for me as well. So you mentioned writing some blog posts and getting attention for your MVP and your early prototypes. It's the chicken and the egg problem, especially for something like what you've ended up building, is really fascinating to me. And it sounds like you found the right ways to get people pointed to it. I saw earlier, I was Googling your name and saw your post about your trick to drum up, I think it's something like 1,000+ stars on your GitHub repos, right? Things like that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you've got a marketing muscle somewhere along the lines. And I'm curious how you landed on that. Like, is that just a natural thing for you? Is that something that you gleaned from people you followed? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to think. Yeah, so I think I have in total like maybe 5K stars. I've done two like things, some really like it's honestly it's like 100 lines of code in Python, but like done something useful, very connected, basically like the RSS feed of New York Times with just name New York Times and you type New York Times and you get all the latest news from its RSS. It's something really easy, but no one thought about like doing this. But I guess, yeah, so this kind of marketing or like, let's call it like go to markets for developers is actually not, I don't think it's right now, it's not, it's one of the, honestly, it's not what you should do in the beginning. What you should do is you should like call people and like talk to them and like email them. But I probably started it because I knew that, like, early on, that's the only thing I actually. I think I thought I understand how to write. Yeah, I was writing some technical blog posts before, like in the Rust tutors and stuff. So I thought, like, I feel like I understand really well how to write and how to talk to developers, and that's actually someone who I consider myself to be. So that was just the thing that I thought I will do the best. Not maybe I also thought back then that this is like the right approach. So we were just more into, like, we'll just try something, and let's say it's something that we probably assume that we know the best. So
Hmm.
that's kind of why I think that's why we decided to talk to, like, try to do, like, I think you can call it like the bottom up approach, or like trying to talk to, which actually ended up, I think, not being. I don't know. I think, it's really hard to go and like write emails and talk to people and try to get some like decision makers to talk to you, people with real problems. And I think, and it didn't help, honestly, the fact that we spoke just to developers, because usually a lot of them, they themselves don't know what they do. All what they need is, like, not really something critical. They just want to play around with something. So I guess for some industry maybe this worked, but for ours, that's I don't think that's like kind of the right the right approach. And I think, like, we lost a lot of time trying to talk to wrong people, maybe.
Yeah, that is also an interesting angle too. And you've said this in a way that a lot of founders who have been through the process and have found their way into a product say that in hindsight, there's definitely other things you could have done, but really the fundamentals that we hear a lot of: go talk to as many people as you can who you think might be your customers before you build something, validate the idea, then spend time building it, and then, iterate, keep talking to them over and over, things like that. I'm really interested too that you came to this through YC Startup School. And then from our sort of prior chats, I know you had an interesting way of even getting into your Y Combinator batch too. Can you tell me a little bit about?
Yeah, so we applied to YC. I think first time we applied as soon as we started. And we applied in total 4 times with Newscatcher, and we got invited to interview twice with Newscatcher, and we actually got invited to YC twice with Newscatcher. In summer 2021, we had to decline, like, going to Y Combinator because we already agreed to go to Tiny Seed, a small kind of program for bootstrappers. So we took some money from them and took this like year to basically just like do our small bootstrap thing, as we thought, like, it doesn't have a big enough kind of market. And then basically we reapplied in 2022 for summer 2022. We got into interview again. It was with Michael Seibel. From 2021 to 2022, we grew from, I think, so when we started, we had like zero MRR. Then when we applied in 6 months in 2020, I think we had like a few $100, maybe $1,000 MRR. Then we first accepted to Y. So it was our third application in 2021. We were at like 3K MRR. But and then, they kind of like accepted us, and we said no. I said, like, we explained it was all fine. I think big kudos to Brett Flora, who were the partner there. And we reapplied 1 year later, and we kind of was like kind of really like, I spent on the application probably like a day. Really, like, at this point, I didn't like spend that much time there. But I think we got really like, nervous because, like, right now we already got some money, so we had to show actually some growth. So we grew from 3K to 20K. And I guess I don't know what, but like YC accepted us again, and I was really happy. We are like with Michael Seibel, because I think I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of his. And I think a few things for people who kind of want to apply to YC. I actually think I know why we got accepted. So I have some like kind of assumption about why we got accepted. So a few things here, like, first of all, we got really consistent. So we applied first time, we said we're going to work on it. We applied second time, we said, like, yeah, we actually worked on it. We applied the third time, we said, like, yeah, like, you didn't get back to us first 2 times, but look, we get some progress, and so on and so on. I guess it's really important to show kind of, the consistency that you have. I guess a lot of people think, like, because that's what YC kind of actually, I think they seem like, okay, you have some idea, you say you want to commit to it, but like, if we don't accept you, are you actually going to work on it? Because, like, usually I think you should work on it whether you get to YC or not. The YC shouldn't be, or it's not the only way to start like a startup. And I guess, last time there was like apply to YC on Haiku, there was like a lot of crowd saying how YC is bad, or how a lot of companies do like millions of ARR without funding, which is again true. I don't say anything about it, but YC is trying to invest into people who like say like we're gonna build $1 billion companies or like $1 trillion companies, and obviously that is a really different path from like what you can do bootstrapping. And if you're solo founder and doing $1 million a year and spending on it probably like 3K bucks in AWS bill, I mean honestly that's absolutely fantastic. You just like cashing out all the money, but it's not $1 billion company still, even though you can get paid more than founders that actually started $1 billion companies. And one thing that stood out to me on Hacker News, there was like I think someone saying like how people in YC, they like they need to go to Harvard or MIT or this or that. And I thought like it's probably true. It's true because the best kind of kids get accepted to MIT. MIT doesn't really give them that much. However, it's actually like they have such a high bar that obviously that's a market for like kind of people. But IC, I think, has always been and still is a place for outsiders. And I guess the biggest kind of the biggest companies are built from outsiders. And I guess that's something you can probably like say about us. Maxime and I are like first time founders. We never studied computer science. We got into coding. We started Newscatcher by quitting our jobs. We come from a country, from a region where the war started in 2014. So we are like a typical example. And like we don't have any like cool kind of degree. The places we worked at were like as SMBs. We never worked at like Microsoft, Apple. We had not like no good school, no good university, no good like place of work. Like none of this is really like a requirement. So it's rather being consistent. I think the last thing I'm going to say about YC and people who try to get accepted to YC, I recommend a lot of people to YC, and then they get to the interview and then they get rejected, and I ask them why, and they tell me like, yeah, they told us about because of this or that, and I'm looking at them and say like, look, don't worry, like I don't have this figured out yet either. So that's one of the reasons, but I guess the biggest one is like YC invest in people. They kind of, if you're like a great founder with like the honestly what you're gonna think is like the stupidest idea that never going to work, they still going to fund you because they know that like you're smart enough to like validate it, understand that it doesn't work, change your mind and build something great. So YC really invest in people, not ideas or anything like that.
I concur, and it's a hard thing to convey. You will see a lot of things online about people applying to YC and getting no message back, but getting rejected, not hearing back, getting an interview and getting rejected. And I think the through line in your story, and from what I've seen and observed with my company and with others that have been through the program, is that not only is consistency important and people being invested in the problem they're looking to solve, but showing some penchant to listen to feedback and make change based on your business. So when they say they're investing in founders, it is really like the type of person who wants to build a company that the company will be successful, not the type of person who has an idea and it has to be that idea. Many YC companies have been through pretty wild, like 180-degree pivots that have moved them from, one area of the world to something completely different. And it's a subtle, weird thing. I, like you, I'm also not an MIT or Stanford or Harvard or, wherever, Carnegie Mellon grad. I went to a humble public state school here in the US and have stumbled through a lucky career since then. But I think a lot of the folks who I met, especially going through the summer program at YC at the very beginning last summer, we kicked off with an outing, long weekend where all of the YC founders for the batch went. And one of the things that was consistently true with every founder that I met was imposter syndrome. Everyone thought they didn't belong there for one reason or another. I'm too young. I'm too old. I haven't finished college. I don't know if my idea is good. I'm not smart enough. All these things. That's maybe hopefully a happy thing to hear for a lot of people. Like nobody really thinks they can do these. And it's an important thing to realize that we're all fallible in some way and we're all, just trying our best. It's not like there's some secret handshake that makes YC founders better or different or whatever than everyone else. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should get off my high horse there too. There's definitely a lot of privilege wrapped up in what I'm saying. So yeah. Okay. So Artem, you went through the YC program. That was your summer of 2021 was your batch. So that was a few years ago now. Tell me about where Newscatcher is now.
So we, in summer 2022, we went to YC.
22, sorry.
Yeah. So 2 years. Yeah. 2 years ago. So yeah, when we went to YC, we had a lot of different types of customers. Basically, like people doing probably like the like a lot of platforms we needed integrated news or something like that. And I guess when our first meeting with Michael Seibel, he was like, "Okay, guys, I like doing like what is this like? Is it like for enterprises?" And we said like, "Yeah, it's probably should be for enterprises." And then he's like, "Okay, so what is your like? What are you trying to like? How many like calls and sales calls you have?" And I'm like, "Well, we don't." And he's like, "Yeah, so you should probably go and find four and get four pilots before YC starts. So you have pilots with real companies with enterprises." And I thought I did actually that, but then I realized that I have practically like four people interested enough, but not actually like signed anything or like not even like agreed on the price. Well, long story short, it ended up really well. We closed a few big contracts. I actually like get into full YC more. Like I flew to one guy to his like villa in Italy for like one day, and it was actually ended up being a lot of partying. And then like next day, fortunately, we got all him and I. Well, we both like woke up actually early, so we actually had like 20 minutes to discuss the business. We did some kind of like handshake agreement that they're gonna become our customers, and yeah, by demo day we basically like had like nothing much changed, but we just had more customers and like more kind of idea that it should be working. So by our demo day, we already had like 450K ARR, which isn't actually honestly that good. If anyone listens to me, it's really good if you have that after you like just started YC. But if your company already exists for quite a while, that's also like I don't know if that's a good result or not. But then basically we got great investors. Like I spent fundraising like 2 days actually. That's one of the magic of YC. And yeah, we got a small round that we just needed really fast and get back to work. And I think we kind of I'd say didn't do that. I think what we should have done we didn't we didn't do that. And so the 2023 was somewhat like us being like adding more customers, but struggling to find like where is the market, where is the product, what is the problem, where is the kind of fit. And I think only now, so we getting kind of hell of a year in 2024. I think partially because like large language models got like much more,
Mm.
but a lot of people right now understand that like how easy it is to work with text, and now they need great sources of data. And one thing about us, we got really lucky because we always double down on data quality, while a lot of competitors like did on like NLP and stuff. And like with large language models, basically all your NLP is like now like everyone is at the same level. You need to start from zero, and it got really easy. I think we recently like we are hopefully like still gonna end up on like having almost already 100% growth since the beginning of 2024. And I think we at the stage where I realized that what we should do is basically we should do like Palantir like deployments, more like onboardings. We have great data. We know that in this data there is a lot of value for a lot of enterprise customers. We know that no one does those like bespoke kind of integration. Well, especially big companies that can't afford it for the same prices we do, even though we charge like six digits. Like, Microsoft engineer with like $1 million salary, like you're never gonna be able to like, to afford the same stuff. And so basically what we do is like we take our data, we take a lot of like different LLM based like models. We take our customers' data, which is usually the trick is like it's usually like different from for each customer. And we say like, look, based on the data you have and the data that we have, we're gonna try to build like a connection. Then we will try to make sure that like our data like it was really work like in the most like excellent way possible. And so you actually can have something that works really great and works really great for you. And the thing is like and I don't see other way like some of our competitors trying to build like kind of NLP and reach news API. And and what we hear from our customers like, yeah, we try this but it doesn't work because like yeah it has a lot of different tools, but it's never enough to like perfectly feed. And so we said look, just try to believe us. We have the most accurate, like the coolest data that you need. And we actually gonna spend a little bit of time making sure that like we like do the integration initially, and then it's gonna work. And I guess that's our plan right now. And one of the beauty of this is like it actually works really well because like one, we can charge a lot for that. and like we can have like this onboarding, we can actually spend a lot of time and resources to make sure that works, because again, we need to do it once, and then it's like, it just working doing the same thing, with obviously doing some kind of like supporting and maintenance in between, but it works. And two, that's like, I think like the only like the big superpower that we have is that we can invest all those like custom thing and like a lot of like our time to actually make those connections. That's one of the things that like the big companies can do, and that's one of the very few. That's what YC says. Like, you need to do like really, you need to make your customers really, really, really happy, because you can and no one else can. And one of the best thing is like, it makes much more sense when you do like big checks, because if you build in something that like technically you'll have to scale to like, let's say like million of users, custom, you still need to like do a lot of like talk to your customers, each and every one. But it's really hard economically to do for really long when they pay you $5 or like 50 bucks, $500. And it's much easier when they pay you half. You can extend this like kind of, you can extend this period of time for much, much longer if your customers pay you much more, and like continuously learn. And yeah, and we're at the stage where we're like trying to build a lot of those different connectors for a lot of different use cases. But at some point, we like, every additional customer get like it becomes easier and easier for us to do so. So hopefully at some point, which is actually like, I do this, I just recently started to learn about like Palantir. And that's what like Palantir been doing this for like 10 plus years. And only recently they started doing actually products that kind of like somewhat scalable. So I think Palantir is like a great, great example of like how given those bespoke integration actually can still make you like, I don't know, like a multi-billion-dollar company.
It is the economic match there is really interesting. Like the Palantir is a quiet giant, I think, for a lot of people. Like I think possibly the audience of this podcast is more familiar with Palantir than, let's say, 95% of the world. But the way that businesses like that grow and become successful has a lot to do with their early plans and like the targets that they try and land. And getting your business to a state where you're growing by leaps and bounds is also something that requires that level of strategy. And as what I would imagine is a scrappy little company in comparison to Palantir, there's different ways to do that. Definitely different ends to those means, but it's certainly possible too. And I think it's a fantastic story and a really cool thing to see, like just how you've grown from like a project in your flat and suffering through learning R and moving to Dubai and all these things to something that's really a growing and inertia gaining project over the years. And especially now, I would imagine being in a season where news is going to be more and more important, and LLMs certainly have gained an impossible amount of popularity. It's probably an interesting year for you. Is so I should couch this in the fact that you and I are recording this the morning after the very first US presidential debate, which I could not watch last night. I just didn't have it in me to turn it on for a million different reasons. But do you imagine that the sort of political, the election season in the United States will ratchet up user base for you? Do you think that'll have an impact on your end users?
I think not really. And the reason for that is like, it's exactly what I was talking about. Like our customers, like, I think such thing as like, the presidential debate is usually something that like stakeholders, like chiefs, should just read and understand. There's like nothing that much that you should do. However, if a company that owes your company money has some small news that their branch getting closed, that they like kind of had a fire or something, or that they actually like a local news this year that they are changing the CEO, that's what you kind of, that's what's like a stuff that people really don't think about. But then one day it like hits back on them, and then they come and see like, okay, look, every time someone doesn't pay us, we actually, so or one bank says like they don't pay us, and we go and check like why this happened, how could we know this before?
Mm,
And we go and check the news, and we realize that like, okay, probably if we were reading like the local newspapers, we would knew that months ahead that probably they're not doing right. And like, and sometimes they're like, and we even give them more money when they ask. But like financial reports were like fine, but financial reports are not something you get like every day. And like,
of course.
probably if like, yeah, if company changes management like really frequently, maybe there's like something wrong with it, or or like all of those funds. So like all of those things, like it can like, it's not probably like gonna be like $1 billion change for each company, but there's a lot of those small little things that can be captured,
Hmm.
and like it honestly like missing those or directly or like indirectly can cost like tens of millions of dollars for but per departments of big companies, and that's kind of where we're trying. But obviously, like there's always gonna be like people trying to build like news website coverage comparisons, sentiment like Trump and Biden, and it never kind of like it never monetizes into anything. I feel like,
Right.
but yeah, so we're like trying to do a little bit more like not mainstream stuff. And that's why I say like, some companies think that they follow news while in reality they follow like the biggest news that everyone follows, but they don't really follow news that can affect their business in a day to day.
Of course. And for you, having this strategy must have a leveling effect where seasonality is not something that you have to deal with quite as much. And from a founder's perspective, it's nice to have predictability and growth and stability, maybe in ups and
Yeah.
downs and things like
Yeah.
that.
And that's
So,
that's that's another really nice thing about like enterprises and like doing deep integration. Cause like honestly, if we succeed and if it works, I don't know what has to happen for them to like go to someone else or like to do something else. Cause like even like because that even just to change it to someone else is like already gonna be like a like maybe a half a million investment for company like in terms of like salaries and change. I know they will like customers if you do something that fits like a glove and it works for them, customers like they gonna stick with you. Like your LTV is gonna be like huge because like unless it doesn't bring them real value or unless they kind of run out of business, run out of money, you'll kind of like you're married forever.
yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into the nitty gritty of it. Tell me about your tech stack. Like the API developers are thirsty for nerdy details at this point. So tell me how you've built Newscatcher and the bits and pieces you've tied together to make it all work.
Okay, that's funny. So long story short, we have everything is like deployed in the on-prem on Kubernetes. Mostly one thing I want to say is like not something really you should worry about, especially when you're like a small startup. You have to start as fast as you can. And that's why we started with AWS and Lambda Foundation. But then one thing we found out is like if we get like if for whatever reason, we're like a small customer to AWS or GCP or anyone else, if we get kicked out of them, not only we're gonna have a problem that like we just need to find other servers, but we're also gonna get bounded to like proprietary like services, and it's sometimes really hard to like change those. So we said like, look, we're gonna do everything open source. Everything's gonna be infrastructure as a code, and if something happens or like we need to scale, we can just like deploy the same kind of stuff on other clusters, on other hardware, and that's what we do. So it's all Kubernetes and like a lot of Dockers, a lot of different microservices. I assume that like are connected together. And our main stack is like Python Q for like event processing, Elasticsearch for indexing the data. And to be fairly honest, there's probably like 50 other different technologies, but they like well one
That
yeah, like
makes sense.
like Fast API and we do, like a lot of right now like basic LLM we've like fine tune like Mistral 7B, for example. And
Mhm.
actually, yeah, one thing I would okay, we're not their customers. I think we're using their open source service, but I think they're a really great company. Open Pipe by
Mm.
YC company. It's a great company for help you find tune. Yeah,
OpenPipe.ai.
OpenPipe. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
the founder, he's actually an ex Y Combinator. He's an ex Y Combinator software engineer. Yeah. Oh, he has by the way a great landing. He has a great landing page. It has some great ROI numbers. 25 times cheaper than GPT-4. 5 minutes to start and $17 million saved by our customers this year. That's a great.
That's a solid
Great.
pitch.
All right, so that's what I like. I like people like trying to understand the value. Yeah. So we use an OpenPipe, for example, for fine tuning some stuff, and yeah, it's all kind of open source. No kind of proprietary, not much proprietary stuff.
Okay. And Tell me about Newscatcher's story from a open source perspective. Have you made any of your software available for people to peek at?
Yeah, we don't really have our software available just because it's not really kind of possible. But we have two things. I have a few open source projects. One is actually called Newscatcher, the one that we done while we just like doing our MVP, which kind of gives you, and I don't maintain either of them, by the way. Newscatcher, another one, Pi Google News, like it's basically like a like RSS feed documentation of Google News, which I had to like hack around myself because there was like no documentation. So basically, Google News has RSS feed and it doesn't have documentation. There's like a lot of
Yeah.
parameters that I had to like kind of deduct and try to like just hard like try one after another one to see what is actually exists, what works, what doesn't work. And another thing, we actually have free access for researchers and we have a bunch of research papers. I think the most interesting is one of the recent one by Berkeley, where they see how well LLM can forecast the future using like news. And they use our API there. So that's like an interesting one. So yeah, if you're like a researcher, if you're a student and you want to mess around with like news and that's going to be your research, just go to us. We have free access for researchers and we are really proud that we do that. And like, yeah, we, for example, also help to big non-profit organizations, NGOs, like we should, I don't know, like, so we sign and we have like, we're going to help Transparency International catching all the news coverage about corruption and briberies and stuff like that. So there's like a lot of cool stuff we do for free.
I love that. I think it's really an important thing to have some access to folks who can benefit from your product who never could afford it. And it speaks a lot to what you've built and certainly the value that you've provided for your customers that you can, in some way subsidize people who are doing research and things like that. Artem, I'll make sure to reach out to you and grab links to the research papers that you mentioned, because I think that'd be something that'd be one, fascinating to read through, and I'm sure listeners would like to get to. But I think it may also give some indication for some of the folks who listen of the sorts of projects that might be interesting for people to pursue if they're looking at Newscatcher, or if they might be a good fit as a user of yours. I'm curious then, for the folks in the audience listening, how would they know that Newscatcher might be something that they should explore as a use case for their company?
Gosh, that's a great thing to that we actually don't know answer yet. Well, but so globally, what I say is like is it every industry has really different things. Like some industries to do adverse media check, for example. Like you open a bank account, they probably need to run like an adverse like check that like there's no news about you doing like I don't know what. But and there are some companies that just like can benefit and sometimes they just like don't know what they like it just like they use too much manual time for that. So what usually I try to say to everyone is like, look, if there is like if there are any news that are happening either locally or globally or in other countries, whatever it is on your industry, that like your business can directly benefit from. For example, I don't know, like we have companies that like sales intelligence. They say like, look, we just need to know when our customers raise more money, open new business or something like that. And they say we do it manually, we lose a lot of time on this. But as long as you can like articulate clearly what kind of news you have and like as long as you can say like what kind of answers you need from each news article, we basically gonna make sure that you kind of receive those at the right kind of at the right time, at the right place. And a lot of people just like don't know how that a lot of stuff is possible. Like even one of my latest discoveries, like financial industry, like or like where people invest money. We have customer right now is like private equity in real estate, and they want to know if there's like any public transportation infrastructure expansion going on. Like if like if there's like a bus station opening somewhere, like the prices of the multifamily apartments going to go up there. So they want to know that. And there's like hundreds of those news like every day. Right? Or like a financial institution, they not always invest in Apple or Microsoft or Palantir. Sometimes they buy bonds from like hospitals and universities and schools. And they kind of need to know local news about the schools, like if everything is happening there, if they're gonna fail on this bond. And there's like a lot of those stuff where kind of I guess people know that like there are news and they just like don't know how to scale it, or they just never thought that they could do. So we kind of try to help those that like figure out that there was like something in the news that important to their business and they come to us and we try to like make sure that what we integrate it like into their existing workflows, into the systems perfect.
The summary I'm hearing perhaps is that if your business or your strategy is swayed by signals in the news and you want to trigger some sort of reporting or workflows or decision making or whatever it may be, this is a good use case for plugging into Newscatcher and trying to listen to the broad swath of places where news can come from.
Yeah. And I would say like the only thing is like it doesn't have to be some like we work with some like foresight trends team. It can be that, but it's usually like much, much more specific, but which is still for some kind of, companies is like, $100 million line of business that gets like affected by small news every day. And they just like don't do anything about that. So just by changing this, just like a slightest bit can save minutes or so.
Well, Artem, thank you so much for joining. Before I let you go, I have a couple of important questions for you. First of all, are you hiring? Are you guys looking for anyone at the moment?
Yeah, we kind of always hire now. So we are looking for, I think right now we're going to look for 2 positions. We just hired our first like, technical, like kind of account executives, and we're going to probably look for 1 more. So what I'm trying to do, like we do, like I said, a lot of like bespoke integration. So you need to be really, really technical. You're not going to have a sales engineer with you. You're going to have to understand like how things work. You need to understand like customer problems and try to like come up with some smart solutions and things. So we're looking for technical account executive, aka the closer, the guy who actually does the sale. And then we probably gonna look for our very first like LLM AI engineer slash data scientist. I don't know how you call them
Cool.
today. We
Yeah,
do a lot of like, so basically we do a bunch of like fine tuning and stuff. We do really basic things. Surprisingly, they work. And probably right now it's the time for us to take it more seriously. So I don't know if you are passionate about AI and LLMs. We know I cannot promise you like $1 million NVIDIA cluster. Actually, I can promise we're not gonna have that, but we can deliver something like 0 to 1 with just little resources, but measure the output. And just, we have a lot of, one thing I learned is like working with enterprises, really few of them actually need this like 100 millisecond latency stuff. Some of them can wait day or like 15 minutes. You can do a lot of right now with LLMs if you have like 15-minute windows. So yeah, we're looking for like for a great like AI engineer. We don't have those posted yet, but probably by the time this podcast is live, you can kind of apply. Yeah, we're looking for, and yeah, we mostly, I'm sorry for folks in the US who I think like the majority of the crowd, but we most likely need someone to work around the European time zone
of
as we are
course.
all in Europe. Yeah.
Amazing. Artem, of course, I'll throw those in the links to any job openings you have in the description here. The other thing I wanted to ask, and I don't actually think we've said it out loud on the podcast yet, Newscatcher, what's your website?
Yeah, it's newscatcherapi.com.
Love it.
Yeah.
And where's the best place for people to find you if they're looking to chat with you, Artem?
Yeah, if you are ever in Warsaw, Poland, please like really reach out to me. I don't have like, it's
Yeah,
not that many people here I know, so I'd be happy to ask you out for a coffee or something.
cool. That's amazing. I would hope that people take you up on that. I've heard Warsaw is an amazing place too. I'd love to visit sometime. Artem, thanks so much for joining. I really appreciate it. It's been fantastic chatting with you, and what an interesting product journey you've had. Anytime you're interested in coming back on the show, we'd love to have you. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Take care.